Do you know how unique you are? And that God speaks to you in individual ways? As an individual, you receive and respond to these messages differently from your friends and family. God will use various approaches to call you for a specific purpose. He may give you more than one calling and may call you at different ages and stages in life. You have a lot in common with Bible characters. Any one of the following ways could be the method God has planned to get your attention. Which one of these ways have you heard God? Are you the type that needs to hear God's calling directly? In other words, are you the type that doesn't understand the language of hit? This was exactly how God called Samuel. Samuel's mother had prayed to have a son and promised to dedicate him to God's service. So instead of living with his mother, he lived with the priest Eli. Now, even before Samuel was born, God had a purpose for him. One night when Samuel was a young boy, resting in his bed, he heard his name called. He got up and ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." And Eli said, "I didn't call you, go back to bed." Well, this happened 2 more times before Eli realized it was God who was calling him. He told Samuel that the next time he heard his name being called, to say, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." Well, God did call his name again, and this time Samuel responded. That's about as direct as it gets. Now, you may not hear God's voice out loud, but instead are provided with situations where it is so obvious He is calling you. And you can say the same thing. "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." Maybe you don't recognize that you are being called because it isn't direct. But there is a divine plan in place, and God has been preparing you for it all along. This is what happened to the beautiful young Esther. Her cousin Mordecai was raising her, and one day, while she was playing in the streets, the king of Persia had his men bring many young girls to the palace to participate in a beauty contest. Well, she won and became his queen. In turn, her good character saved the Jewish people from being destroyed. Now, there's a lot more to this story, and you can read it in the Bible. A whole book is named after her. The reason I mentioned Esther was because she didn't know until a crisis occurred that she would be called to a very important mission. It came through the words of her cousin, "If you remain silent at this time, you and your father's family will perish." And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Then she risked her life by asking for a personal meeting with the king. He agreed, and she corrected misinformation, which saved the Jewish people. Is there anything going on in your life that you have been put into a position for such a time as this? Do you need a sign? I have a friend who sees everything in her experience as a sign from God. She connects all the dots or situations happening and gives gratitude to God for all these divine connections. What signs do you need in order to be certain God has called you? Moses was given a very clear sign, a burning burning bush that didn't burn. Not only that, but he also heard from God directly. He witnessed many signs of God's calling. He needed a lot of convincing because he didn't think he was the right choice. Do you need many signs before you are convinced that God has chosen you to fill an important position or mission? Well, maybe you don't realize that there is something better for you, but God wants to take you out of your current situation into an adventure where you get to discover your relationship with God. Rahab was living in Jericho, a city not known for their moral conduct. She had heard about these Israelite people and their God who performed many miracles. She was impressed and desired a more spiritual life, but didn't really know it. She had hid some Israelite men to protect them from being captured. These men conquered the city and saved her and her family. She joined the Israelite community, got married, and one of her descendants was King David. So no matter what is going on in your life right now, God can call you into serving Him in unexpected ways. He can remove you from a bad situation and bring you into an amazing life. You might have the perfect job and aren't even thinking about changing it, but your calling might come out of necessity. Some of my friends have been called to care for an aging parent or to raise a grandchild. Nehemiah was a very important servant in the king's palace. He was a cupbearer and kept the king from being harmed. The king trusted him and respected him. When Nehemiah heard that the walls of Jerusalem were destroyed, he was distraught. The king noticed his less than sunny disposition and gave him permission to go repair the walls. This was a calling out of necessity, and all that was necessary was provided for Nehemiah's journey. The king provided an escort and wrote letters to governors of the town through which Nehemiah would pass, and they gave him supplies. The king even commissioned Nehemiah to act as governor of Jerusalem. Have you been called out of necessity? You can be certain then that all your needs will be met. Lastly, are you called to use your circumstances to bless others? Lydia is mentioned briefly in the Acts book, the book of Acts. Her calling to hospitality was long-lasting. She sold purple cloth, which was very difficult to make and expensive to purchase. But this gave her great wealth and a home large enough to host Paul and other followers of Jesus as they went on their mission trips. She didn't give up her current work, but was called to add another one. Her job supported her ministry. Are you working in a position that creates enough income to allow you to be part of a ministry or mission? These are just a few ways God called people to serve Him. Like these Bible characters, it doesn't matter how old you are. Samuel was a boy, and Moses could have easily retired. It doesn't matter whether you have a great job already or one you want to leave. Lydia didn't give up her job. She was called to use her resources to help others. Rahab was glad to give up her profession. And Esther didn't have a choice of where she was, but she did have a choice in how she responded to it. You are truly blessed by God with qualities and characteristics that make you uniquely called to do something that will make a positive impact in many lives.